Gord, it is so good to be with you. We practiced this a little bit, but not probably enough because there are hours and hours of questions I could be asking you. But the first one is you're in Winnipeg right now, and it's in the wintertime. I'm in Atlanta, so we're about to get a snowmageddon, as we call it here. And I think you have a couple of inches on the ground, which is nothing for Winnipeg. But thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I want to know, I always think it's interesting when I talk to a CEO of a company is you entered somewhere into the industry and it wasn't as CEO. I want you to go back, talk a little bit about your background and why you entered the industry, how you did, and then we're going to talk about your role at MTM Machines. How'd you get into this?
It's interesting because I think my career has been kind of moving towards the position of again, machine development into product development. I went to school here in Winnipeg and got a mechanical engineering degree. From there, I was able to work for a few companies like Caterpillar and General Electric, where I was able to, I guess, develop or gain skills in product development, product testing, and field service. And so when I joined MTM in 2008, joined as an engineer, got the opportunity to work through various roles up to the position that I am now as president. But over that time, I was able to travel and visit transformer manufacturers all over the world and get involved in everything from design to business development, and eventually now to where we're looking at all aspects of the business.
Our Transformer Technology brand, our magazine, is one of our APC Media brands. And I've been in the transformer sector for about 20 years now. When I first got in it, I didn't know it because I'm a mechanical engineer too. Didn't know anything about transformers, right? Now I know they are the heart of the system. The transformer is what makes everything work in the entire grid, in the entire cover. There's nothing that flows in electricity that doesn't flow through a transformer, right?
Yeah, you're correct.
So you are right in the battle, right in the midst of the battle. You said that you've had a number of different roles at MTM. Talk a little bit about that. The one that you think was most valuable to you right now. So a role you played at MTM that you say, that has given me the most insight into the industry.
Well, it's interesting because when I graduated from university, my first job was with Caterpillar, and that job was in product test and development. So we took products that were being developed and we tested them to ensure that they met specifications before being released to market. So I learned a lot about what is needed from a situation of serviceability and functionality and what the final user needs in order to do their job correctly. So I think that background was very valuable when I started at MTM because it allowed me to look at the machines that we were designing and building for customers and make sure that those elements were integrated into the machine designs.
Excellent. So the application at Caterpillar moves over to MTM. You do that. And you said something that's very critical because we're going to talk a good bit about it. The impact on what you do, what Caterpillar did, what you do at MTM on the customer. Because how does the customer use the product? That's a changing industry. Transformer manufacturing has been pretty flat for decades. About the 70s, 1976, it seemed like demand suddenly flattened or began to decrease. And there were a lot of transformer manufacturers around, and many of them closed shop, went out of business, sold, did whatever they did, Westinghouse selling to ABB, those kind of things happened. And now we're seeing a hockey stick effect. MTM, you joined in 2008. Tell me a little bit about the history of the company. How did it get started? It doesn't just make product for transformers, but talk about the company as a whole.
It's interesting because we're in the middle of our 60th year right now. So MTM has been around since 1964, always in Winnipeg, a Canadian-owned company. We started out manufacturing as a machine shop for the local industries here. So aerospace, agriculture, and heavy vehicle industries that are here. Over a few years, we started to build some custom machinery for, I guess, local transformer manufacturers here in Canada. And then that became the core business of what we did. So we've shipped equipment to about 48 countries around the world. Our primary focus out of all those industries that we worked on is the transformer business. And of that, we build primarily coil winding machines for distribution and medium-sized power transformer manufacturing. We also build cut-to-length lines for stacked core transformer designs, and we have a lot of tooling and fixturing that supports the wound core market that exists as well. I see our focus as being delivering a cost-effective machine to the market that the customer can very quickly realize and see a return on their investment.
I love the word cost effective. There's a lot of new products coming into the market and they're not cost effective. It's like, oh, this will help you cut this by 10%. You're going, yeah, but the cost of it is too much. So I love that about MTM. Let's talk about the industry. So when I say industry, I'm not talking about the power industry. Talk about the transformer market because that's who you serve the most. And as I mentioned, it has been a hockey stick. I mean, it was flat and all of a sudden the demand is just completely outpaced. And that's true of distribution transformers all the way up to power transformers. I realize there's somebody now trying to buy a 1,000 MVA transformers. Well, it takes 7 years if you want to buy a 1,000 MVA transformer, about 7 years lead time. I don't think that's going to work. So this hockey stick effect, Canadian reference to all of a sudden demand is skyrocketing. Supply is not keeping up with demand. We're all kind of concerned about, hey, is this a blip or is this a long-term cycle? And everything I've read, because we work with companies that do research, one of our companies, PTR, does a lot of research. What they're indicating is in every instance, this is not a blip. This is now a demand curve that is skyrocketing because of the modernization of grids everywhere, and definitely because of data centers, especially AI data centers. They use tremendous amounts of power. You all have to look at it because that's your customer base. Do you see the same thing, or are you concerned at all, or are you just gearing up because there's so much growth?
Yeah, I mean, we're downstream of the OEM, the transformer manufacturer. We're downstream of the grid, I guess, as you can say. We certainly have seen and experienced an increase in inquiries and orders related to winding machines and core cutting equipment. That inquiry, I guess, is really focused around automation and the ability to improve productivity with the equipment. I think there's a lot of equipment out there, but it is more manual in its operation. So I think people are looking for advantages to increase production, knowing that there is perhaps a constraint on manpower.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of CEOs of transformer manufacturers. They all have similar problems. They have greater demand than they are capable to supply. But the biggest problem they seem to all have is to get quality trades craftspeople, because it is still a manual operation, as you say. How hard is it to go from a manual operation to retrofit into an automated operation, especially for windings?
What we've tried to do with our machines designs is balance that technology with what we call those manual tasks. We've designed interfaces that are touch screen, very intuitive in their operation, which would be, if you grew up with an iPad or an iPhone, it follows the same logic and operation. So I think it makes it easy for this new generation to adapt to the machines. I think there are opportunities to automate a lot of things on machines, but sometimes it's just easier to do it with a less automated solution, making it more cost effective. I think one of the easiest examples would be when looking at tensioning wires when doing a coil winding. Traditionally, those systems are controlled with mechanical systems, springs and pulleys to tension the wire, and the operator has to make a judgment call on whether those wires that are in the winding are tight. Over the past few years, we've worked to develop automated systems to control that wire tensioning aspect of the machine. So the operator has the ability to program in a desired tension value, and then that maintains it throughout the layer and throughout the whole coil design. From an onboarding standpoint for a new operator, now they're following the prompts that are on the touch screen on what the next steps are for the coil design that they're doing. They don't have to focus on, say, tensioning, which was a very subjective and skill that was developed over time. So what we've tried to do, focus on those types of elements that would help with the onboarding process and getting operators up to speed faster, making it repetitive and consistent.
Yeah, I think that issue of tensioning, because it is, or it was, is subjective. When you have a problem and you don't pick it up, you don't solve it. That shows up when everything then is pressed together and we energize a transformer. We have seen over time, those are the areas where you have that problem with tension. Those are the areas that create the biggest problems, and it's extremely expensive to solve it after the fact. Am I correct in saying that? I'm giving you the reason why I'd buy your machine is, hey, if I don't solve it at the point of, we call it the criticality point. If I don't solve it then, the solution is extremely expensive. So spend a little bit more money solving it then, is our engineering approach.
I don't think that's incorrect. I mean, in manufacturing, I think it's everybody's desire to be process driven instead of people driven, right? And so this machine or the features that we offer on our machines allows you to do that. So standardize in how you approach the coil winding, and then you get the repeatability between machines and operators and between shifts and so forth. If you can fix it, I guess that would be the only other thing. If depending on what happened, you might not be able to fix it.
My next question was going to be, talk a little bit about MTM and the value proposition that you bring to the market, but you just did that. Are there any other things? As if I were a client and I'm making transformers and my demand is skyrocketing, I'm building a new plant, I have an existing plant, and I'm thinking of 3 CEOs that I know right now that have an existing plant, building a new plant, trying to increase production to meet demand that is skyrocketing. Make a pitch to me. Tell me why I should buy from you, Gord.
Very seldom do I actually give that type of pitch, Alan. I think the conversation usually starts off more about what are your needs and requirements, and then I would back into the answer to that solution. But I guess what I can tell you is MTM has what we feel is a cost-effective solution for manufacturers that are in the transformer industry.
When you talked about MTM machines, the company started customize. It was a machine shop. You were making custom parts for people and doing what machine shops do back 60 years ago, right? And part of that is listening to the customer, finding out what their situation is, and then providing a solution for that situation. Almost, well, back then it was a custom solution. That pedigree is what continues today. So when you mentioned, when we make a pitch to a customer, what we do is find out what their situation is. We ask questions. And then we come in and bring our automated solutions to solve those problems. So you've had to have looked at the consistent problems out there. Do you customize every solution? Is there kind of one standard automated system and you just implement it, or do you customize every one?
So I would say that every project starts off with a standard machine design, but it often is customized to meet the customer end requirement. So various numbers of conductors, whether that's strip conductor or wires or different technologies for insulation, all of those things can be modified and integrated into one machine design. I would say that each manufacturer has a slightly different focus. So whether it's high volume, low mix, or the opposite, we can tailor machines that would align to both of those types of manufacturing requirements.
That's an important distinction, because if one size fits all, then you force them into your solution. If you can say, yeah, we have a standard we start with, but we meet your need depending upon where you are. And I love that mix versus demand. You can create a lot of volume of transformers if they're the same transformer that you repeat over time. And if you have to make 10 different transformers in a week, you're going to create a lot less volume, right? Last question, as you're looking at the industry as a whole and you're looking at MTM, you go to bed at night, you have to decide if you worry about something, okay? I don't think you're a worry. When you go to bed at night, what worries you?
Well, I've been trying really hard to focus on the things that I can control and not so much on the things that are out of my control. But I think you're right. I'm not so much of a worrier. We've moved into a new location. We've done a lot of things over the last year with a lot of thought and consideration. Where is the market going? I feel like we're really prepared for this hockey stick curve that you've indicated in your earlier statements. We see that demand coming from our customers, and we're up for the challenge, I guess, to maintain what we consider the lead times to deliver that equipment. In terms of concerns or what keeps me up at night, I don't really think there is too many things. Obviously, the external noise that's going on, I guess, at any time in the world is there, but you do your best to mitigate those items.
Yeah, and that is something we don't control, but we react to, and that's why you not being a worrier is good, because when one of those forest fires in California, for instance, right, if you had a transformer manufacturer somewhere around there, you would have to adjust, and that's kind of what we look for. If you were to, if again, I'm going back to me being a customer, I use the word pedigree. A 60-year-old company has a built-in pedigree about how you do what you do, right? What is the pedigree, the culture that MTM, that you're trying to perpetuate, you're trying to create? It's already has to be created to an extent, but what is the culture that you're focusing on for your people at MTM?
I think that we realize that building a machine is only part of the relationship that we have with the customers. That relationship continues on for the into the future as that machine is operating, and being able to support the customer throughout that entire life cycle of the equipment is important. So what we're trying to instill with our employees and the culture here at MTM is, we want to provide high quality machines and really look after the customer as we move forward and support them in their manufacturing.
You mentioned before this idea of flexible machines. I don't know what a flexible machine is. I think of a robot coming in and just doing welding, right? It's not very flexible. Talk about this idea of the flexible machine that you're bringing into the marketplace.
In our previous conversation, we talked about what are some of the challenges I think that transformer manufacturers are potentially seeing, and one of them I think is a changing market. Different kVA classes of transformers are in demand, and then that changes, and if the OEM is purchasing equipment to meet a specific solution, but the industry changes on them, do they have the right equipment, right? And lead times being what they are, I think these are all things that need to be considered at a given time. So what I think MTM is offering or can offer is what we would call a flexible machine deployment strategy. And so that strategy is really, we can offer a machine that can easily cover a wide range of capacities with modifications that can happen after the machine is installed or can be configured at the time of purchase. So I guess a good example would be if we had a machine that was set up to do multiple coils. So for distribution manufacturing, we could do 2 or 3 coils at a time. And then if there was a need to do larger kVA classes, the machine can be very easily configured to do a single coil. So giving more flexibility on that machine. Another example would be having machines that are what we call combination machines that have the ability to do the low voltage and high voltage sections all on the same machine design. If you go from a situation of high mix, low volume to the opposite, you can easily transition that machine to handle both types of scenarios with no modification, say in the field. This is an idea that I think gives the OEM or the transformer manufacturer the ability to apply the machines to a larger range of product classes as things evolve over the years or months. We'll see how the industry goes.
If I were an operations manager, which I have been in my career, I would love the idea of, because I get these corporate things from top on down, right? That say, oh, by the way, the mix has changed. I need you to, and retool. That's what we call it, right? We have to retool the factory. The automated flexibility, the flexible automation that you're talking, I like that, automated flexibility or flexible automation. When you're talking about, is that retooling process, correct?
Yes. And, we have a white paper on this topic. So, I mean, if there's anyone that's kind of interested in knowing a little bit more about how we can deploy that technology, not so much technology, but methodology for their application, that they want to reach out, then we can certainly share that with them and kind of go through that conversation.
Excellent.